The cafe was quiet, the kind of place where time seemed to slow down, and the world outside continued on without a care. The faint hum of the espresso machine was the only sound that cut through the hushed atmosphere as he sat by the window, staring out into the busy street of the city. Mark Turner was just another man blending into the fabric of everyday life. His routine was simple: wake up, go to work, meet a few friends, and come home. Nothing spectacular, nothing out of the ordinary, or so he thought. As he stirred his coffee, his mind wandered to the usual thoughts: work deadlines, the bills piling up, and the latest news about the city. It was just another typical day in his uneventful life. But today, something felt different. A strange energy lingered in the air, as if the very fabric of the universe was shifting, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. It started with a woman entering the cafe. She was striking, with dark hair that cascaded down her shoulders and sharp, almost ethereal features that seemed out of place in such a mundane setting. She moved through the room with a quiet grace, as though she was more than just a stranger, passing through. Her eyes scanned the room, and for a moment Mark felt as though she was looking directly at him, pulling him into her gaze. He dismissed it as nothing more than a trick of the mind, but when she approached his table, his heart skipped a beat. "Mind if I sit?" she asked, her voice smooth, almost melodic. Mark blinked, momentarily taken aback. He was about to say no, but something in her presence made it impossible to turn her away. With a shrug, he nodded and gestured to the empty chair across from him. As she sat, her presence seemed to fill the small space, as though the room itself had become quieter, more focused. It was as if the very air had changed. "I'm Alara," she said, offering a smile that was both warm and mysterious. "Mark," he replied, still unsure of what was happening. He couldn't shake the feeling that this moment was somehow important, but he couldn't quite place why. Alara's eyes never left his, studying him with an intensity that felt unnerving yet strangely comforting. For a few moments they simply sat in silence, as if the world outside had ceased to exist. Mark fidgeted with his coffee cup, trying to make sense of the situation. She was beautiful, certainly, but there was something else about her, something he couldn't explain. "You don't know me," Alara finally said, her voice cutting through the silence, "but I've been watching you for a long time." Mark's brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" He couldn't believe what he was hearing. "I don't even know you." She leaned forward, her eyes narrowing as if choosing her words carefully. "You don't know this yet, but you've been chosen." His heart raced at the words. Chosen? For what? Was this some kind of joke? He had never met her before, never seen her face, yet here she was, speaking as if their destinies were already intertwined. "Chosen for what?" he asked, his voice tinged with skepticism. "For the future," Alara replied, her gaze intense. "For the survival of an entire species. You're the one we've been waiting for." Mark's mind was racing, trying to process the words that didn't seem to fit with the reality he knew. His fingers gripped the edge of his coffee cup as a chill ran down his spine. Was this some kind of scam? Maybe she was some part of a recruitment agency, trying to convince him to invest in something. But something about her, the way she spoke, the way she looked at him, made him feel like this was no ordinary conversation. "Listen," Mark said, his voice shaking slightly. "I think you've got the wrong person. I'm just an average guy. I don't even know what you're talking about." Ilara's lips curled into a knowing smile. "You'll understand soon enough. You are not just any man, Mark. You have a role to play, and whether you're ready for it or not, you will step into it." She reached into her bag and pulled out a small device, placing it on the table in front of him. It was sleek, metallic, and unfamiliar, nothing like anything Mark had seen before. As she touched the device, it began to glow softly, casting an eerie light between them. "Take this," Alara said, her tone firm. "This will help you understand. Everything you need to know is here." Mark stared at the device, his mind swirling with confusion. What was this? A futuristic gadget? Was he part of some sort of experiment? His hands trembled as he reached for it, the weight of the moment pressing down on him. Before he could say another word, Ilara stood up. "You'll need time to process all of this, Mark. But trust me, it's real. The future depends on you." And just like that, she was gone. She left the cafe as quietly as she had come, leaving Mark alone with the strange device and his racing thoughts. His heart thudded in his chest as he stared at the glowing object in front of him. Was this some kind of prank? Or had his life just been turned upside down? There were too many questions, too many unknowns, but one thing was certain. He was no longer the same man who had walked into this cafe just an hour ago. He was chosen. The future had already begun to unravel around him. Mark sat in his apartment staring at the small metallic device Ilara had left him. It glowed faintly in the dim light, its smooth surface almost calling to him. His fingers hovered over it, unsure whether to touch it, yet something in his gut urged him to do so. He had no idea what he was about to discover, but the weight of the unknown pressed heavily on him. He took a deep breath and tapped the device. Immediately, a holographic image flickered to life before his eyes. It was a map, but unlike any map he had ever seen. It was detailed, intricate, with lines connecting places he couldn't recognize, constellations and symbols that felt familiar, yet completely alien. As the map expanded, words appeared and a voice echoed in his mind, a soft and clear voice that was both comforting and chilling at once. "Mark Turner, you have been selected because you are the key to the survival of our future. You are the one who can shape the destiny of entire generations." The voice was not Ilara's. It was deeper, more authoritative, as though it belonged to someone far older and far wiser than anyone Mark had ever met. Who are you?" Mark whispered, his voice shaking with a mix of fear and disbelief. The hologram shifted, revealing images of strange, vibrant worlds. There were bustling cities floating in space, lush green planets filled with towering trees, and alien beings that Mark could barely comprehend. The voice continued, unwavering. "We are the Arden, an ancient civilization spread across the stars. Our people have been watching over humanity for centuries. You, Mark, are the one chosen to father the next generation of humans, one that will carry the Arden legacy and protect the future of our species." Mark's mind spun as the images continued to flood his vision. Was this real? Was this some kind of elaborate hoax? He shook his head, trying to clear the confusion that was clouding his thoughts. There had to be an explanation, some rational reason for this. But as the hologram zoomed in on a planet he did not recognize, he saw beings that looked like the woman, Ilara, tall, elegant, with glowing eyes and skin that shimmered like the stars. "You're telling me that? I'm supposed to be the father of a new generation of people? An entire species? Why me? I'm no one special," Mark muttered, his voice full of frustration. The hologram flickered again, this time showing a close-up of Ilara's face, her eyes staring back at him, calm and certain. "You are special, Mark. You have been chosen for your unique potential. There are those among us who see the value in you, who believe in your ability to guide the future. Your genetic code holds the key to what we need: strength, resilience, and the potential to carry forward a legacy that will shape the destiny of both our people and yours." The words hit him like a ton of bricks. He had always thought of himself as an average man, living an average life. But now, he was being told that he was at the center of something far greater than anything he could ever have imagined. The realization sank in slowly, like ice water filling his veins. He was a part of something bigger than himself, something that could change the entire course of human history. The hologram changed once more, now showing a scene of destruction. He saw a planet being torn apart, cities collapsing, and people running in chaos. The voice spoke again, this time with urgency. "This is the future that awaits us if we fail. Our world, our people are dying. The balance of power between our species and yours is tipping, and only through the union of the Arden and humanity can we hope to restore it. The next generation must be strong enough to carry the burden." Mark's eyes widened as the images, played before him, showing entire civilizations falling into ruin. He felt a pang of fear, not just for himself, but for the world he had known, the people he had always believed would live on and thrive. The burden of responsibility felt heavy, almost suffocating. "But I'm just one person," he said, his voice trembling. "How can I possibly be the one to save all of this? How am I supposed to do any of this?" The hologram flickered once more, the voice softening. "You are not alone, Mark. The Ardane will guide you. Ilara, the woman you met, is your guide. She will help you understand what it means to embrace your destiny. Together you will have the power to shape the future." Mark sat back in his chair, his mind racing. He was no longer just Mark Turner, an ordinary man. He had been chosen for something far beyond his understanding, and the weight of it all was beginning to feel unbearable. He was meant to be the father of a new generation, the savior of two species, and the one who would lead them through a future fraught with danger. The silence in the room was deafening as he processed the information. There was so much he didn't know, so many questions left unanswered. But one thing was certain: his life would never be the same again. He looked down at the device in his hands, still glowing softly, and felt a surge of determination. If this was his destiny, if this was his purpose, then he would have to face it, no matter how impossible it seemed. But what choice did he have? The future of humanity, and of the Arden, rested on his shoulders. With a deep breath, he stood, up, his mind made up. There was no turning back now. He was chosen, and now he had to fulfill his role. The next chapter of his life was about to begin. Mark sat in his small, dimly lit apartment, his mind spinning. The device Ilara had given him lay before him on the table, glowing faintly in the darkness. The holograms of distant planets, alien beings, and the vivid images of the world's destruction kept replaying in his head. It had only been a few days since Ilara first approached him, and his life had completely changed. He was no longer just a man with a simple routine. He was now at the center of something far bigger, something that could decide the future of entire species. He had tried to push the reality away, tried to convince himself that it was all a mistake, that there was some kind of misunderstanding. But deep down he knew it was true. He had been chosen. The Ardayan, the mysterious alien race, had seen something in him, a potential he never knew he had. He was their hope, the key to saving their people and ensuring the survival of humanity. And yet the weight of the responsibility felt suffocating. Mark stood up and paced the room. How could he do this? How could he possibly become the father of a new generation? How could he be expected to lead two entire species to a future where they might survive? His thoughts were clouded with doubt. He wasn't equipped for this kind of responsibility. He didn't even know where to start. He walked across the room. The sound of the doorbell broke his train of thought. It was late and he wasn't expecting anyone. Hesitant but curious, Mark opened the door to find Ilara standing on the other side, her expression calm but knowing. "You've been avoiding this, haven't you?" she asked softly. Mark didn't respond. Instead, he stepped aside and allowed her to enter. The tension between them was palpable. Ilara had become both his guide and a reminder of the duty he couldn't escape. She had told him that he was chosen for greatness, but it didn't make it any easier for him to accept it. "I'm not ready for this," Mark finally admitted as they sat across from each other at the table. "I don't know how to do what you're asking of me. You want me to be the father of the future. But I'm just me. I'm just an ordinary man. I've never been special." Ilara's eyes softened, but there was no pity in them, only understanding. "You are special, Mark. You may not see it yet, but you are," she said, her voice gentle. "It's not about being perfect. It's about stepping up when the world needs you most. The future depends on you, but you're not alone in this. We will guide you." Mark ran a hand through his hair, frustration bubbling to the surface. "Guidance doesn't change the fact that I'm not cut out for this. I don't even know where to begin. The Ardayan, your people, they're asking me to father a new generation. to play a role I never signed up for. How am I supposed to do that? How am I supposed to live up to this? Ilara leaned forward, her eyes locking with his. This isn't about being perfect, Mark. It's about making the choice to act. The future of humanity in the Ardean isn't in the hands of just anyone. It's in yours because you have the power to make the right decision. You are capable of it. Mark stared at her, silence stretching between them. He wanted to argue, to fight back against the impossible expectations being placed on him, but the truth was he didn't know what else to do. If he walked away, the future of so many would be at risk. The weight of that responsibility was overwhelming. "What's the plan then?" he finally asked, his voice strained. "How do we even begin to move forward?" "I don't know where to start." Ilara nodded as though she had been expecting this question. "We begin with you, Mark. We need to prepare you, both physically and mentally. The first step is understanding your role in this, not just as a father but as a leader. The Arden will train you, guide you in the ways of our people. You will learn everything you need to know." Mark blinked in disbelief. "Train me? You want me to become, what? A leader? A father?" "Yes," Ilara replied firmly. "You will be both. The survival of both our species relies on your ability to lead this new generation, to guide them in ways that will prevent the destruction of everything we've built. The Arden have been researching the future for centuries, and we know what needs to be done. But we need you to bring it all together." The sense of pressure intensified. Mark had never been a leader, never had any inclination to take charge of anything. And yet, here he was, being told that he had to not only father a new generation, but also lead them to survival. It was an enormous burden, one that he wasn't sure he was ready to bear. "Can I really do this?" Mark asked, his voice barely a whisper. Ilara placed a hand on his arm, her grip firm but reassuring. "You can, Mark, but it starts with belief. You need to believe that you can handle this. You have the strength within you to lead, to protect. All you need to do is accept it." Mark closed his eyes for a moment, trying to steady his breathing. He had spent his life being just a man, an average man with a simple existence. But now the fate of two species rested in his hands, and he had no choice but to rise to the challenge. He couldn't afford to hesitate anymore. "I'll do it," he said, the words coming out with more conviction than he felt. "I don't know how, but I will." Ilara smiled, and for the first time since meeting her, Mark felt a flicker of hope. There was no turning back now. The journey ahead would be fraught with challenges, but he had made the choice. He would face it head on, even if it terrified him. The plan had begun. The days that followed felt like a blur of endless training and preparation. Mark's life had completely transformed. No longer the simple average man he once was, he had become something else entirely. A leader, a father-to-be, and the chosen one to shape the future of two species. His mornings were spent learning the ways of the Arden, their culture, their technologies, and their history. His nights, however, were often filled with doubt as he lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if he was truly capable of the monumental task that lay ahead. Every fiber of his being resisted the weight of responsibility. There were moments when Mark felt that he was too ordinary to take on such an extraordinary role. But as each day passed, he became more aware of the lives that were depending on him, the survival of humanity, the future of the Ardean, and the next generation that he would father. The burden grew heavier with each passing moment, but so did his understanding of his role. Ilara had been with him every step of the way, guiding him, teaching him, and sometimes simply listening when he needed to voice his fears. Her presence was both comforting and a constant reminder of the reality he was facing. She had never wavered in her belief in him, and despite the internal chaos he was experiencing, Mark began to realize that he could no longer escape this destiny. He had been chosen, and there was no turning back. But the hardest part, Mark soon discovered, was not the training, nor the planning, nor the responsibility that weighed on his shoulders. It was the moment of decision, the moment when he had to accept the enormity of what was to come. One evening, After a particularly intense training session, Mark found himself standing alone in the Ardean compound, overlooking a vast landscape of alien terrain. The sky was a rich shade of purple dotted with 2 moons and a scattering of distant stars. The air was thick with the scent of alien flora, and the quiet hum of the world around him seemed almost otherworldly. He couldn't help but feel that this was no longer the world he had known. His world had changed, and he had changed with it. Ilara, Mark called out, his voice carrying in the open space. She appeared at his side, her figure framed by the soft light of the moons above. Her expression was unreadable, but Mark knew she understood the turmoil he was feeling. I don't know if I can do this, he said, his voice barely a whisper. All of this, it's too much. I'm just one man. How can I be the one to save both worlds, to father a new generation? I never wanted any of this. Ilara's gaze softened and she placed a hand on his shoulder. You never had a choice, Mark. You were always meant for this. You are the only one who can do it. The future is in your hands, but you don't have to do it alone. We are here. The Ardean are here, and humanity will stand by you. You've learned everything you need to know. Now it's time for you to trust yourself. Mark turned away, staring out into the distance, his thoughts swirling. Could he really trust himself? Could he truly rise to the occasion, knowing that the survival of so many depended on him? The thought terrified him. And yet, deep down, a part of him knew he had no other option. The silence between them stretched on, but it was not uncomfortable. It was as if the universe itself was waiting for Mark to make his decision, to embrace the role he had been given. I'm scared, he admitted, his voice breaking. I'm terrified that I'll fail. What if I'm not good enough? Ilara, he added softly, what if I don't live up to what they expect of me? Ilara's eyes hardened slightly with resolve. You will. You already have. This isn't about being perfect. It's about stepping into the unknown with courage and faith. It's about doing what must be done, even when you feel like you're not ready. Mark took a deep breath, his gaze fixed on the horizon. He could hear the sounds of distant activity, the busy lives of the Arden, the quiet whispers of the future calling out to him. It was now or never. There was no going back. With a final, decisive breath, Mark turned back to face Ilara, his eyes filled with determination. I'm ready, he said, his voice strong and unwavering. Ilara's face softened, a smile tugging at the corners of her lips. I knew you would be. The decision had been made. Mark had chosen to embrace his role, to accept the responsibility of leading the future. He was no longer just a man. He was the key to the survival of 2 worlds, the father of a new generation, and a leader who would guide both humanity and the Arden to their destiny. As Ilara led him back to the compound, Mark felt a sense of peace that he had never known before. The weight of the world was still on his shoulders, but it no longer felt like a burden. It felt like a purpose. And for the first time in his life, Mark knew that he was exactly where he was meant to be. The journey ahead would be difficult, fraught with challenges and unforeseen dangers, but Mark was ready to face whatever lay ahead. The final choice had been made, and he had chosen to embrace his destiny. He had chosen to become the father of the future,